Hey everybody, it's Peter, and it's Wednesday night. We're still running with Marvel's Runaways. Tonight is episode 7, Refraction. So we're still carrying on. What's going to happen in this episode is that everybody's getting ready for open house at school, and we're also playing catch up from what happened the previous episode. But we actually start off with a flashback to 25 years ago, and it's when the first time Richter met Janet in college. So we get a quick little teaser scene. Next scene is having Chase as a baby for the first time, and Victor's all kind of cool and, hey, I got a kid and this is the most wonderful thing in the world kind of idea. Chase, probably 10 or 12, being picked up from lacrosse practice. He's sitting there with his goodie bag, got his trophy in his hand. Victor's late. They get into it in the car. Chase is like, Dad, it was the championship. Where the heck were you, kind of thing. He said, well, I had stuff to do. I'm a busy man and creating the world. Oh, yeah. And he gets lipped back from, yeah, Times Man of the World, and Wired Magazine thinks you're cool. Shitty dad. Victor backhands Chase, like, say that again. Of course, being the smartass kid, he says it again, smacks him again. And now we cut back to present day. The time TV kicks in again with what we saw from the end of last week's episode of Chase warning his dad through the magic of timey-wimey stuff. Dad, whatever you do, Dad, I'm sorry. But Dad, don't pick up the Fisticon gloves. And we leave it there, roll the credits. But the rest of the episode is basically the gang still trying to figure out, they still got to decrypt the files they took from Wizard. I think even by the time of the end of the episode, files are still not decrypted. The parents are trying to bond with the kids, saying, oh, isn't it an open house? And you never go to open house. The other quick point too is Victor is still working on Jonah juice when he got that injection. And I think what it is I don't know if it's secretion or if he just keeps a bottle of his essence, milks himself, however you want to say it. So Victor's still in a good, happy mood right now. But when you saw previously in that one flashback, he was backhanded because he wasn't asked. He was abusive to both Janet and Chase. And Alex's parents are just like, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? They're trying to get information from him because I think it was mentioned again in the last episode that Molly did blurt out that she knew what the parents were up to when they saw them doing their ritual things. Basically, this whole episode, there's so much going on in this episode again. That's the whole thing. I'm surprised they're able to cram so much in an hour, but the problem is we've got all these things. They're still trying to sort out the affair between Robert and Janet. So that's still coming up. But Robert's just like, no, I'm leaving the house. I still love Janet, blah, blah, blah. Later on, Jonah confronts Leslie, or Carolina's mom. You got to sort out the Pride guys. It sounds like they're falling apart. You got to bring them back together because we've got this big project coming up and I need everybody on board. So Leslie's on damage control, and during the open house, she goes to everybody, Janet, you got to sort this out. Robert, get your shit together, and just confronts everybody to try to get back together. And during that time too, and we find out just before the open house, Dale, Gertz's father, he had taken the vial. I think that did cure his brain cancer, but we find out later on that what happened was that it sort of gives you a bit of a euphoria, and that's why Victor turned into Mr. Nice Guy for a while. But the effects don't last long because Dale, Gert's father, I don't know how much he had. Her mom, Stacy, went out of the room. They're researching. They say, oh, it's this DNA pattern in the vials. What they're calling it a serum, and trying to figure it out. And says, yeah, we better get something to eat, kind of thing. So Stacy goes out to go pick up the leftover food from the fridge, and then when she comes back, Dale's all like, hey, wow, hey, you're really cool, and he's like all jumping all over the place and super euphoric, and endorphins and where else are kicking in. She's like, you took a little bit of that, didn't you? But then we find out at the open house that actually Dale came down real quick. He's got the dark sunglasses on as if he's on a hangover, coming off of something. So after effects. So that's a hint of, because then during the open house, Victor's going back to his usual self. He goes up to Robert and says hey, how you doing? No hard feelings. Extends his hand, but then he sort of pulls a Trump, pulls him in, and just gives Robert a look, and then Janet has to jump in to push everybody apart. So there's still all this, conflict. It looks like Victor's going back to normal, going back to ass mode. And there's a weird thing too. Don't ask me why. Molly, I think, tells the gang Alex's parents know something's up, but we don't see the conversation. So I don't know if Molly said, oops, I goofed, and I might have blurted out to Alex's mom about that I know what happened with the ceremony and stuff. The Pride parents are all worried about, well, if Molly leaks out and maybe they don't even know if their own kids know what's going on. So the punchline of that is that Gert's parents are actually going to ship Molly out to a cousin somewhere, and she's almost about to lose it, go glowy eyes, and pull a Hulk on the parents, and then Gertz steps in, luckily at the last minute, and pulls her off to the side. It's like, yeah, no, don't pull your powers. You got to stay strong. You're the strongest of the gang. You got to go with this. We will get you out of the situation. Then we cut back to the Stein house, and looks like Chase is working on the Fisticon glove. Richter comes in, and then he's all like, what the hell are you doing here? You're not supposed to be here. So we saw in the previous episodes, like, they were all buddy-buddy, and we're working on stuff and figuring out things, and we're going to be father and son again. And Victor's like, what did you think, some father-son? So now we finally see that when we saw earlier with Dale testing out the serum, he came down pretty quick. So it's been about, say, 24 hours later. Victor's coming off of the serum. He's back to his usual self. He's abusive. Tries to take a swing at Chase. Chase swings back. Victor goes flying, lands on the table where the gloves are. And when he comes back around, he's got one of the gloves on. And it ties back into the beginning where Chase from the future says, Dad, don't put the gloves on. And he fires off a shockwave or whatever, the energy bolt it gives off. Knocks Chase back, knocks the wind out of him. He's knocked backwards. There's a pregnant pause. And then bang, he gets shot. I don't know if he's shot just in the shoulder or because the blood wound's like kind of here. So you don't know if it's a fatal shot or whatever. And then it's Janet comes around holding the gun that Robert gave her earlier to protect herself in case, Victor does something. And we're left at that. Really, really good. Other little spoiler too, Jonah ends up talking with Frank. It says like, no. You didn't fail at going in the sweat tent and doing your ultra training for the church. You did go ultra. We don't know what they talked about. And then Frank comes back. I guess Leslie's doing some kind of last rites with one of the churchgoers or something. And then Frank shows up and says like, no, everybody out of the room. He, does a hands-on thing. His hands glow. We find it at some kind of trick that Jonah showed him. It's not energy of him. It's some kind of funky gloves he can wear. And he does have a flashback to, hey, what's going on? And he sees the scene we saw before with him seeing Leslie and Jonah getting it on. And I think the reason the flashback came on, he picked up something when he was looking for some stuff to decorate his office. And then he actually does show the picture of Jonah still looking the way he does, but there's this young girl standing beside him, and I'm assuming it's Leslie as a young girl, and he's like, what's going on with that? And then there's this conversation of, is he the one? And she says yes, and then instead of him flipping about, oh, Jonah slept with my wife, he's like, oh, well, if it's according to the church writing that your father did a long time ago, I'm all for it. Everybody else is freaking out about affairs. Frank's just like, no, this must be some divine thing that's supposed to be happening. Really good. Recommend watching it. If you haven't seen it, it's on Hulu. If you're down in the States, go check it out. Anybody else still watching this? Fan of the Runaways? Or are you watching some of the other Marvel stuff like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? But what did you guys think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Leave your comment below. Did you like, dislike my video? Don't forget, hit subscribe, ring that bell, and see you in the next one.